Hey guys, welcome to Break the Code. Today we're learning one of the most powerful tools in JavaScript, the reduce method. It can look confusing at first, but once you understand it, you'll see why so many experienced devs use it. Let's break it down step by step. So what is the array.reduce method? The reduce method loops through an array and combines all the items into a single value, like a number, a string, or even an object. You give it a function and a starting value, and it builds something with each step. Okay, so let me explain the syntax of the array reduce method. So we need the array, then we call the reduce method, open parentheses. Then we need a function, open parentheses. And here we need the accumulator, then the current item, then between curly brackets, we want to return the updated accumulator. And here we will have the starting value. So the accumulator keeps the result so far, while the current item is the item being processed. At the end, the reduce method returns the final accumulator value. Okay, let's have a look now at an example to sum all numbers in an array, which will give you a much better idea of how the array reduce method actually works. So let's declare a variable, call it numbers, and assign it a few numbers. So we will have 5, 10, and 15. Then we want to create another variable called total, and then we will assign it the numbers array. Then we call the reduce method, open parentheses, and then here what we want is the sum and the number as parameters. And then using the arrow function, we want to return the sum plus the number as the first argument, and then 0, which is the initial value, as the second argument. So if we console log now total, we will get 30 here. But how does this actually work? So let's break it down step by step to see how we get to 30 in the end. So let me comment this out. We go here and let's look at what was the initial state. So initial state, what did we have? We had sum equal 0. Where is this coming from? This is coming from this one here, the second argument. Remember, this sets the initial value. So initially, sum is 0. And then after that, we will start the iterations, starting with the first iteration of the reduce method. So in the first iteration, what's happening now? Well, we have the numbers and reduce. Then we have sum and number, and then the arrow function. So at this point in time, in the first iteration, sum is 0. Plus, what is the first number in the numbers array in the first iteration? It is the number 5. So we have 0 plus 5, like that. So now, in the first iteration, sum equals 5. So again, in the initial state, sum was 0 because of this second argument here. But in the first iteration, sum, which is 0 here, basically it's still 0 here in the first iteration, and the number is 5. This is the first iteration of the reduce method. And what is the number here? 5. And remember, we are returning sum plus number, starting with the initial value or the initial state of sum at 0. So here again, sum starts at 0, or like its initial state is 0. And in the first iteration, we have sum, which is 0 in the first iteration. This is sum here. And we need the number of the first iteration of the array, which is what? It's 5 here. So we take that and we have sum plus 5, because this here, sum plus number, is what we are returning. And because of that, sum in the first iteration will equal 5. So far, sum equals 5. In other words, in the first iteration, the accumulator is 0. And the current item is 5, which is coming from the first iteration of the numbers array. And we are returning, remember the syntax, the updated accumulator. So we are returning the sum, which is 5. Okay, let's see what happens now in the second iteration. So let's copy this to save some time. And here, just make some changes. This is the second iteration. Okay, and what is happening in the second iteration? So in the second iteration, we want this sum here, 5. So 5 has to go here. It's no longer 0, it's now 5. This is, remember, the updated accumulator. So what is it now? Well, it is 5, right? So 5. But in the second iteration, the number is no longer 5. This was in the first iteration. So what is the number in the second iteration of the array? It's 10. So 10 has to go here. Okay, so we have 10 here. So the sum now is basically 5 plus 10, which gives us 15. So again, the initial state was 0 because of the second argument here. So we set it to 0. That's why sum is 0 here. And in the first iteration, we take the sum here plus the first iteration, the number, which is 5. Because again, we are returning sum plus number. Sum plus number. So the sum is 5 because 0 plus 5 equals 5. And then we move to the second iteration, knowing now that the sum is 5. And what are we returning? We're returning sum plus number, but for the second iteration. So the sum from here is 5 this time, not 0 anymore, it's 5. And then the second iteration of the number is 10. So 10 goes here, 5 plus 10 is 15. So let's now have a look at what happens in the third and last iteration in this case, and it is the last because the length of the array is 3, because we only have 3 items in the numbers array. So in the third iteration, what is happening now? Well, remember, we ended up here in the second iteration with a sum of 15. So now this sum, the updated accumulator, has to be this sum here. So it has to be 15. And we want the number of the last iteration, which is 15. So we need 15 here. So let's update that to 15, or this is what's actually happening. And again, we are returning sum plus number. So we are returning 15 plus 15. 15 plus 15 is 30. And again, remember, when we console log total, we do indeed get 30 here. So let's recap all the steps, because I know this is a bit too much. So we started with a numbers array that contains 3 values, 5, 10, and 15. Then we declared a variable called total, assigned it the numbers array, then called the reduce method, and between parentheses, we have 2 parameters, the sum and the number parameter. And then using the arrow function, we are returning sum plus number, which is the first argument in the function, and then 0, which is the second argument in the function that represents the initial value or the initial state. So this 0 here that you see is basically sum equals 0 in the initial state. Then in the first iteration, remember, we are returning sum plus number. So what is sum? Initial state 0. So here's sum, this is sum, plus number. Where's this number coming from? It's coming from the first iteration of the reduce method of the numbers array, which is 5. This is the first iteration, second iteration, third iteration. So 5 goes here. And then 0 plus 5, if we're returning 0 plus 5, then we are returning 5, because 0 plus 5 equals 5. So we ended up with sum equal 5. So the updated accumulator now is no longer obviously 0, it is now 5. So we have 5 now, and now we are moving to the second iteration. So now we are in the second iteration here. We need again the sum plus number. What is sum at this point? It's 5. So 5 goes here. And then plus number. Which number? It's the number of the second iteration, which is 10. So 10 goes here, and we are returning 5 plus 10. So we're obviously returning 15. So what is the updated accumulator now? Sum is now 15. It's no longer 0 or 5. It is 15 at this stage of the second iteration. Then we move to the final iteration, the third iteration, because we have 3 items in the array. So the length of the array is 3. We're moving to the third iteration, knowing that the updated accumulator at this moment in time is 15, and we are returning sum plus number. So 15 is this sum here, and then the number is coming from the final or third iteration in this example, which is 15. So this is the number, 15, goes here. We are returning 15 plus 15, therefore we are returning 30. And because we don't have any additional numbers in the array, this is when the reduce method is going to stop and is going to give us the result of 30 when we console log total. So in summary, all we did in this example was to add each number to the running total starting from 0. Now, if you're finding this video helpful so far, please consider supporting the channel's educational mission, hit subscribe, and don't forget to leave a like or drop a comment with your thoughts or future video ideas. Okay guys, let's now move to the last item in this episode, which is the practice exercise. So I would like you to create an array of prices with the following prices: 19.99, 5.49, 3.50, and 12. Then use the reduce method to get the total price. And then finally, round the total to 2 decimal places. So pause the video now, have a go at it, and come back for the solution. Okay, so let's have a look at how we could solve this. So we would declare a prices variable, and then we assign it the following array of numbers prices, starting with 19.99, 5.49, 3.50, and 12. Then we want to declare another variable, total, and assign it prices, the array dot we call the reduce method, and then we need the accumulator, then the current item, which is price. Then we want to return the updated accumulator, sum plus price, and the starting value, we will set it to 0. So now let's console log total. And then let's always round the total to 2 decimal places. So we do that with the toFixed method. And we enter 2 here. So let's have a look at the difference here if we didn't have toFixed. So let's copy that here, and then let's remove toFixed 2, and then let's change the numbers here a bit. So here right now total equals 41.035, but in the toFix and set to 2 decimals, we get 41.03. Great work guys! Now I know the reduce method in JavaScript is one of the trickiest methods to learn, but now you've got the hang of it. In the next episode, we'll look at the find method, which helps you grab the first matching item in an array. As always, keep practicing and hit like and subscribe if this helped, and see you in the next one.